So as Games Workshop sets up their next narrative arc for 9th edition, could we be seeing some Guard and Tyranid rules coming soon? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about Games Workshop's next campaign supplement series, and what Warzone Octarius might likely herald for the armies that are going to be featured in it. So as announcements go over the big weekend of reveals, this was one of the most minor ones, a new instalment in Games Workshop's very popular £35 or $60 downloadable content series. The releases of the Warzone Charadon supplement books did draw a fair amount of ire, quite big and expensive books for a small amount of rules for certain factions, a lot of which could have easily been printed alongside the codexes that it came out alongside. We'll certainly be getting a bunch more rules for certain 40k factions in these books, but perhaps more interesting might be what it heralds in terms of codexes and things, which certainly dropped alongside the Charadon books. Out of the armies featured in Warzone Charadon Acts 1 and 2, the majority of armies that were featured within them did get codex releases alongside. Book 1 had extra rules content for Admech, Death Guard and Drakari, and Book 2 had an expansion for the Sisters of Battle. Out of the armies that got some supplement rules content, only the Knights, the Chaos Demons and the Chaos Traitor Legions didn't get codexes alongside them. Though to be honest, the Chaos Demons was kind of more brand new content, with a new datasheet for Be'lakor and his mixed Chaos Force, which I'm hoping to get a video out about fairly soon. The Traitor Legions was just a reprint of previous supplement content, so it's only really the Knights who have had one of the standard releases of extra content that didn't have a codex drop. For all the criticism of these books, I can kind of see what Games Workshop is trying to do here. They're basically trying to have constant campaigns rolling to keep the evolving narrative of 9th edition moving forward, and tell a few cool stories as various bits of the 40k galaxy get plunged into massive conflict. They've got quite a lot of interesting narrative campaign stuff here. I think it's just kind of annoying to have the match play content arbitrarily separated out into these rather than in the codexes. In any case, Warzone Octarius Book 1 is called The Rising Tide, and it's got a nice picture of a Tyranid warrior featured on the cover. I'm sure with all the previews that they've had coming out, most people are at least a little bit familiar with the Octarius sector now, but it's been part of the background for a fair while now. The Tyranids of High Fleet Leviathan had been held back by a massive effort and sacrifice by Imperial forces, and diverted into the way of the Orc Empire of the Overfiend of Octarius, pitting two enormous Xenos races against each other in a near never-ending conflict. Tyranids only need more biomass to keep their fleets moving forward, and the Orcs can provide loads of that, and Orcs thrive on wars waged against them, greenskins from distant planets migrating towards the scrap and the great big fight, and the Orcs that survive a few battles becoming progressively bigger, meaner and stronger. For the most part, the Imperium has been looking on the sidelines of this great conflict, but whether the Tyranids or the Orcs emerge victorious, the victor is likely to emerge stronger than ever, and an enormous threat to any nearby Imperial forces. Now, aside from obviously featuring some Orcs and Tyranids, they haven't really said too much as to what other factions might be appearing in Warzone Octarius. However, on the community article when they released the news of this book, they also released 3 big battle shots, which I think certainly have a fair amount of chance of being miniature shots that are going to be released in the book itself. Unsurprisingly, Orcs featured in every single one of these, Tyranids featured in one of the army battles, but most interestingly, the Imperial Guard featured in every single battle. It's not just the same army either, with models rearranged. There was a Scion force, a bit of a big Cadian tank line, and a more of a mixed force. But I think it's just really unlikely that they'd have this amount of prominence in the release material if we weren't getting at least some Guard contents. At the very least, it could be something like codex supplements for Cadians, or maybe an army of renown or two. It will sort of feel like we've already been here. The Guard were featured really quite heavily in the Vigilus Defiant book, one of the previous campaign series. They actually got some really quite good rules for running artillery companies, tank companies, and mechanized infantry, only to have all of those formations kind of soft banned in 9th edition, when the Grand Tournament mission pack said that you can't use any of those specialist detachments in the new competitive games, meaning they're often dropped by people trying to make optimized lists. I think it would be a bit annoying if they just try and give those back to us in a different form, particularly when we've already had that content released. As it goes though, Guard really haven't had it too bad in 9th edition, at least compared with most other factions. We've already had that Gaunt's Ghost released, the Cadian kit at least updated with an upgrade sprue, and now we know we basically have an entire regiment in a box with the Death Corps of Krieg, which I'd argue is perhaps one of the best plastic kits Games Workshop has ever released for Imperial Guard. To me it seems at least fairly plausible that Games Workshop might actually be releasing a Guard Codex in the near future, and maybe this could be one of the first inklings that they're on the way. The Astra Militarum really could use a tune-up. They do have a few strong options right now, but they're hardly competing with any codexes that have a 9th edition release. Otherwise, with Tyranids on the cover, it seems pretty much impossible that Games Workshop could release this book without at least some Tyranid rules in it. I know they managed to get through a Charadon campaign without any Orc releases, but then they didn't have Orcs featured in the cover or even in the background. As it's Hive Fleet Leviathan in the sector, it seems to me that it could be quite believable that they could be the recipient of an Army of Renown, or maybe more likely a Codex supplement for Hive Fleet Leviathan. They're perhaps one of the biggest, baddest threats in the lore. It wouldn't really be too bad to see them expanded. We do also know from Rumour Engine pictures that there is at least one Tyranid model that's going to be released in the near future. Just from the aesthetic of these, I don't see how these could be anything other than a Tyranid creature. Maybe perhaps something slender and skeletal, perhaps like a revamped Lictor or something. I strongly suspect that this will be dropping whenever the Nid Codex drops. Again, certainly not impossible that it could be somewhere on the horizon after the next releases, which are likely Grey Knights, Thousand Suns and Black Templars. Otherwise, I'm sure the Orcs will certainly have some content that could easily have been included in the Codex. If they follow the pattern of Admech that came out at the same time, they might both get a Codex supplement and a Army of Renown. And another interesting thing from the background of these whole army shots is that Deathwatch do appear in the background of a few of them. Whether they're just going to be more of a lore presence, or again if they receive something extra, I wouldn't be too surprised. Certainly if there's a Xenos versus Xenos conflict that the Imperium's trying to contain, it would make absolute sense for the Deathwatch to have their presence felt there. Finally, from the last teaser that they gave us, we also know that Black Templars are on the horizon, hopefully going to be crusading across the Charadon sector in some form, putting Orcs and Tyranids to the sword left, right and centre. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how this conflict plays out in the narrative anyway. Often in the background you don't really see either side really triumph over each other. It will be interesting to see if anyone emerges as a clear victor in the sector though. So as always, I look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments below. Do we have Guard or Tyranid codexes on the horizon? And if so, what would you like to see? Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep up with any news of Games Workshop's releases as they come out. I'm particularly looking forward to any more details from the Imperial Guard. Finally, if you'd like to help support the channel, I would just like to mention that I have an Element Games affiliate link down in the video description. Element Games being a discount retailer based in the UK that gives 10 to 20% off Games Workshop's miniatures. If you click the link in the video description before ordering something, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more whatsoever. Can just be a way to help support the channel if you were thinking about buying in some models anyway. For people in the USA and Canada, I do also have an Amazon affiliate link down there too. Click on that and literally if you buy anything off Amazon whatsoever, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics. Again, it doesn't cost you any more, so it can just be a way to help support on things that you would have bought already. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.